Hi, I thought I'd show you how to make a lined notebook for your Midori. A lot of people have struggled with this. I've managed to do it in, well, yeah, after a fashion. You can just buy like a Moleskine cahier or a exercise book or something that's lined and just trim it down to fit, and that will work. But this is much more economical. These pads of paper cost maybe £1.50, £2 here, and you get 200 sheets. And I'm only going to use 20 sheets at a time, so that's a lot of booklets. I get through one a month, so that's basically 10 months of booklets for me. It doesn't really matter whether they're stuck at the top or the sides, because I'm going to cut it off anyway. But what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to count out 20 sheets. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Now this 20 sheet, this Collins paper is actually very good quality, so it's quite heavyweight. If you're using really thin sheet paper, you might be able to go up to 32. I bought one that was a lot thinner than this, and it went up to 32 really easily. So I'm just going to take all of that off in one go, and it's okay that it's still stuck together. So the width of a Midori notebook is 110 millimeters, which is 11 centimeters, and this paper is actually only 20 and a half, so 205. However, if you use a Midori, you'll know that putting 3 booklets together means that the middle one sticks out. So what I do is just put this middle one, this smaller book, in the middle, so that it fits. You know, you don't have anything hanging out the end. You can see here I've got Midori paper in here in the middle, and you can see how close to the edge it is and how far it hangs out. But mine doesn't. Mine stays in nice and neatly. And also where I've got my pencil and pen loops on the front and back of this notebook, it actually means that those sit in kind of the valley that's been created by that little notebook. So yeah, I actually prefer this. If you like all your notebooks to be the same and you like the whole thing of the Midori's hanging out the side, that's not going to work for you. But if you like it to be a little bit neater, then this is an ideal answer. And quite simply, all you're going to do is measure the height and chop it off, and then fold all the pages in together. So, let me take my main one out of here. You will end up with this. And I've just put some Canson paper on the outside. This is pastel paper, so it's a bit thicker than just normal paper. Now mine are odd sizes because I didn't measure it according to the size of a Midori. I measured it to the size of a Moleskine cahier, because I have lots of these to use. I've got about 6 to 8 of these, and they're very slightly taller, and I had to cut them off there. But you know, I can use them all up in here. So I cut it very slightly taller. So I'm going to line it up here with the top and move my pencil. There it is. That there is where I need it to be. So I'm going to line that up there. I'm actually going to do it to the nearest line, actually. A little bit further up from that line. And get a Stanley knife or a big heavy duty craft knife, whatever you use, and chop it off. This is a steel ruler. It's actually a quilting ruler. It's plastic or acrylic or something, but it's got steel edging, so I can use it for blades. My knife apparently is not very sharp. You see, it's an advantage to it all stuck together at the back there. Now, you will of course end up with holes along one side. If that's going to bother you, what I did was for each, obviously now we need to take the pages apart and fold them up. So for each page what I did was I put one that way, and then the next one I folded this way. So the holes on each one, you've got one on the left, one on the right. So instead of having a big bore of holes through this, you end up with it's just like you're writing on the back of lined paper as normal. You end up with holes, but it doesn't really matter because you can't see through it. And quite often I'll cover that with washi tape or stick photos over it or whatever. I can usually get rid of the holes. So I'm going to fold up all my inserts now. And I do find it's better to fold them individually. I don't know why, but it seems like they sit better if you do them one by one. But it's only 20 sheets. It's not that hard. There we go, that's all done. Now what I do suggest you do is take a small piece of very fine sandpaper, or just get this flat together, either some sandpaper, very fine sandpaper, or an emery board works very well, and just give this a quick go over. It will take off any of those extra edges, and also it will stop you getting a paper cut. Yeah, I keep getting paper cuts. So I make sure I do that whenever I have a cut edge. Okay, I'm going to grab a piece of Canson paper, and I just like to use colours for my inserts, so I think I'll have... Ooh, it's going to have to be orange, I think. Oh, yellow's open already, I'll use yellow. Now it's tempting to think, oh yes, okay, I'll cut this down to the size that I want. Oh, but no, don't do that, because Canson paper is very, very slightly bigger than A4. So instead of cutting it, if you look here, you'll see that what you've cut is exactly the right width to fit here. So I'm just going to mark where to... I've lost my tool again. There it is. That's not the right one. There we go. I'm just going to mark where to score it, and on this end as well. Why, I hear you ask? Well, I'm going to show you. So I'm just using a embossing tool here to just score it along where I want it to fold, just to make it work a little bit easier. I'm going to do the same here. That's going to be the outside of my notebook. And I like to turn mine upside down, partly because it means that the not particularly clean edge, if you're as bad as cutting as I am, is on the bottom. But also because the bottom of the paper always has this slightly wider margin. Now I'm using thin lined paper because I've got small writing, but of course you could use wide lined paper. You could have a big margin at the top, you could have cut it near the top, but to me that's a waste to have a margin that big because I don't use a margin that big. But this is a good size margin for me, so I get an extra line. So that's going to be my booklet, and this will fold in at the back. Cut the corner, stick it down with a bit of tape or glue, and you've got yourself a nice little kraft style insert on the back inside your wallet, your notebook. So the next thing we're going to do is put it together. I'm going to line it up to the top because the top is a completely flat edge. Make sure it's in every direction. And you might want to clip it together at this point. I don't generally bother, but you're going to want a pokey tool or an awl, and I'm just going to go down to the middle here. Obviously if you've not done this as much as I have, you might want to spend a little bit more time on it, but yeah, I've made these so many times now, I don't need to measure or anything. But of course if you've got a sewing machine that can cope with this weight of paper, you could sew it. My sewing machine unfortunately is sickly at the moment and won't sew. Okay, I'm going to use this nice purple for a bit of contrast with the yellow. And I usually use about double the length of the notebook. Can't find anything on my desk today, and I've tidied it up. Maybe that's why. Nice small but large-eyed needle. Small needle with a large eye. That sounds better. Pop that through there. And I like my knots to be at the back, out of the way. So then come up through the back in the middle. Down to the end. Make sure you don't pull it all the way through. Back down to the opposite end. And just hold this piece down in the same direction that this goes, so that you don't accidentally go through it when you go back down this hole. There we go. So you've got 2 stitches here and 1 long stitch here. Tighten it up. Slip one underneath and tie a reef knot. You might want to do 2 reef knots, you might want to do a couple of reef knots, you might want to put glue on them. I usually just tie 2 reef knots and just make sure they're nice and tight. Chop that off, and obviously that will sit in the spine of your book, and voila, there is your insert. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is from the side that's got the fold in, because I don't want to accidentally cut the fold off, I'm going to make sure it's nice and straight and even. It's got a little bit awry here. Let's give that a bit of a tweak. Okay. Making sure you don't cut this fold off accidentally, we're going to place it flat on the table, line up our ruler with the edge of the outside, and chop off all that unsightly hangover. Again, you have to be quite careful because it will want to slip about and do silly things. Don't try and cut it all off in one go, try and do little bits. Okay, see, we've cut off a bit of the front cover because it wasn't folded right. If you'd done that from the front to the back, you would have lost your little fold over. So there you go, nice neat edge on your book. Again, I'm going to just do that with a nail file. It's gone again. Oh, how do I lose things on the desk? Because it's so big. And just to, you can actually see it, actually when it's first cut it's shiny, and when you nail file it it's very, very, very slightly dull. And it just takes that edge off so that you don't give yourself a paper cut. Now that I've got this all down, I'm going to squish it down a little bit. There we go. I'm going to cut this off at an angle, like with the kraft inserts, just because it works better for me that way. So let's say about halfway, about there. Whoops, trying to cut in a straight line. Okay. And all you need now is a little bit of, I use this magic disappearing tape, but you can use anything. You could use glue on the inside if you wanted to, but I like my covers to be true to size. Make sure you get the obligatory dog hair in there. I don't want that, I want my, yes I do. And this magic tape is called magic tape because it disappears. It's Scotch magic tape. And the beauty of it is when it starts looking a bit old and curly and dead, you can just take it off and redo it because it's not 100% permanent. It takes years to become permanent. There we go, that's that done. Another piece across the... Thank you, Cat. The cat thought I needed a little bit of help there. More dog hairs. Goodness me. Okay, so I'm actually going to do this so that it comes down to the end and over the end. down, fold it over, nice and tight to the edge so it doesn't look odd and stick out. Burnish it down, and I also like to burnish it just along this little edge as well, just so there's no air bubbles in there. Chop off the extra, and voila, you now have a little craft wallet, which does work, if honest. Of course you could leave it, you know, open down the side here if you wanted to. I like to close mine up. And these offcuts fit in the wallet. So I actually use these because they're still stuck together. I tend to use those in the back of my Midori just as, you know, tear and share paper. So you could put them all in there, or you could use that as an ordinary pocket and perhaps clip them on the back, or clip them at the back of another notebook, or, you know, whatever you want to do with them. Just put a few, however you like. I tend to, because I've got 3 notebooks in mine, I've got my blank notebook, I've got my lined notebook, and then I've got this craft notebook, and I tend to just clip my spare insert bits on the back of here, so that I've got, you know, if I need a scrap of paper, I've got some. And this works, you know, this obviously being in the UK I'm using A4 paper, but this also works with letter size paper in the US, but it's just that this bit of offcut will be slightly smaller. I think you will lose that bit actually. I think if you take off that part, then you end up with letter size, but I'm not 100% sure. You need to double check, and also double check your width, because it might be that your width of letter paper or foolscap or whatever it is you use is actually more than 22 centimetres, which is what you want for the full width of your book here. But there you go, that's it. That's how I make my Midori inserts with lined paper.